So today we're going to be painting everybody's favourite still life, fruit. We're going to be doing a little apple, bright and colourful, simple shape. We're going to swatch some colours out and see how they work, so enjoy it. So where should we draw it then? So what angle should we draw this at? Now if we draw it like that, it doesn't really look much like an apple. So maybe we'll draw it from a slight top-down perspective so that we can see that there's a dimple in the top. Look at the way those highlights catch the top there. It's interesting, isn't it? Let's have a look at my palette here. So what colours are in my palette? Well, there's quite a lot of this lemon yellow in there. This is a Rembrandt, I don't know, I'd say it's a kind of middle of the road level, if you know what I mean. The reason why I'm not using my Daniel Smith one is because it's got some very specific colours in. And I like to use a palette that's a sort of off-the-shelf one so that it has more usual things in it. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to probably get in contact with Winsor & Newton and Derwent and see if they can send me what I would consider to be a kind of middle-of-the-road beginner's palette, because then I can sketch with that. And it's something that you guys, I can paint with that, and it's something that you guys might be more likely to have, if you know what I mean. But anyway, you don't need to know all this. So there's some of this lemon yellow in there. There's some of this green here. I'm painting that apple, aren't I? This kind of, I think this is a quinacridone rose type of colour. And I think this is like a potter's pink or something like that. There's some of that in there too. So there's various things that we can put in. So for the swatch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the lemon yellow here. I'm going to get that going. Now I'm just going to check that you can see what it is I'm actually doing here. There we go. I'm going to drop a little bit of that in there. Right, and then I'm going to take a little bit of this green. This is a paler green. That's quite fluorescent, that green, isn't it? I'll try a little bit of the darker green. That's a bit more muted, this one. Messing that up. So then we've got this cadmium red, which is probably a little bit too strong, but we've got this fuchsia colour, which is quite nice too. So this is a transition from a sort of yellowy green into this pink. So what happens when we try and do that transition on here? Do they run together? Does it make anything weird? It's worth checking, isn't it? Because if you think about it, if you run yellow with blue together, you make green. So it's interesting to see what you were actually making there. I'm not sure whether I'm going to use line work or what for this. So that's one of the reasons why I'm going to sketch it in pencil. Now this apple has a bit of more of a squarer side. So as you see, I'm holding the pen a bit further back and I'm just vaguely sketching this apple out, and then I know there's a little hole there, and then this is the bit that runs down there, a little bit like that. So I'm kind of doing some cross-sectional lines, but yeah, vaguely. Okay, so I can see from looking at this apple that there's a little bit of green in that bit, and then some green that runs down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with some of these lighter colours. There's a little bit of this, actually I wonder if that yellow as well. A little bit more of that, not the lemon yellow, the sort of warmer yellow. It's like a Hansa yellow. Or there's a couple of different yellows in there, isn't there? What am I saying? So I'm going to start off with the paler colours. I'm not going to be too precious about this. So I'm going to start off with some of the paler colours. And again, I'm not even going to bother worried about going over the lines or anything like that. Now there's that highlight around the top. I'm going to leave that undone. Okay, so then we've got this slightly paler yellow. And then we're going to use this green. I'm purposely going quite bold with the colours because I like a bold colour. I'll run some of that down there, that's nice. So really, probably not far off in terms of the paler colours. So now I'm going to go in with a slightly darker, with this darker red here. I'm going to pump that up a bit. There we go. Now a lot of these shapes actually run up and round. And there's quite a lot of this purple in here. Okay, so what I've got here is quite a lot of what I would say is strong lines, and I want to soften it off a little bit. Right, so here I have this aerosol. You can buy these, they're really cheap. Fill them full of, you basically just fill them full of whatever you want. I fill them full of ink or water. Here I have one filled that I use with ink in. And I use that to create backgrounds and things. But here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spray a bit of water over this and you'll see what happens. Is what it's going to do is it's just going to soften everything a little bit. There we go. So where I have some of the lines that I don't necessarily want to soften more, what I can do is I can go in and I can just go over them again, like here and here, and it'll just break up some of these lines. It's going to merge all that together. Now, if you keep working that too much, what's going to happen is it's going to turn into one amorphous blob, and that's not what I want to happen here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to go in and just put in the shadow detail and a little bit of texture, and that'll be finished, really. We're going to go and put a little bit more depth of colour. This works as a kind of preliminary base colour, but I want a little bit more depth in there. So concentrating really on these darker tones, and also the idea of trying to get a little bit of more texture in there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is pick up a little bit of that, and I'm going to just put a few dots on. There we go. Just soften up a few of these lines. And I'm just going to create a few more little texture dots like this, and then maybe put a little bit of shadow in there. just down this corner here. So I'm going to use a little bit of this French ultramarine down here. Just create a little bit of shadow. And I'm also going to put a little bit of that corresponding shadow in the top, and then I'll use a dry brush and just pull it out a little bit. There you go. Okay, so I think that's really fun. I don't want to be too prescriptive, if that's the word. I don't want to get too detailed. I mean, actually looking at the apple here, tonally this is probably a little bit wilder, if anything. And obviously there's a lot more subtlety of marks and things in the apple, but I'll just maybe pick up a tiny bit more of this and just put a few little dots. Again, if you do a mark like this and you want to make it bigger or make it softer, you can use your finger like that. You know, these ones here, if you want to just break up those spaces, don't be afraid to get in with your finger and just have a bit of a dab on it. Really, really, it's not a big deal. Just like that there. Okay, so I'm fiddling. I'm going to leave that there. So I'm going to dry that off. Right, so then that's great. I'm quite happy with that. One of the things I might do is maybe just try and reinstate a little bit of these reflections on the top, because they are quite strong. And also there is a bit of a sort of pattern to them. So I might use a gel pen to do that. It does run kind of around the top there in that sort of shape. Like that. And actually there is another slight bit there on the apple, a little bit of a reflection. Right, so in terms of line work, if I was to put any line work in there, I guess I could probably put a little bit on the top just to sort of show that there's that bit there, but I probably won't put any underneath. The one thing I could do, I guess, is I could put a little bit of a shadow in. The French ultramarine and this sort of lilac colour, I'm not sure what it's called on this set, and I'm just gonna drop something in like that. That's quite blue, but it doesn't matter. Perhaps a little bit blue, so I'll get a little bit of that burnt umber and drop that in, and that brown will just grey. It'll kill that blue in there a little bit. So I've done a few tutorials where I've talked about text, and there's a few more coming up. Now I was going to write watercolour apple there, but because I was talking, I've ended up writing waterproof. So I'm going to double down on that, and I'm going to write waterproof apples are there. best. So the date today is the 12th of the 52nd, 2304. And I'm going to sign this with my not signature. There we go. So a bit of text. I'm playing about, really. As you might have noticed, I'm being a bit silly. That's fun, that one. So yeah, does it look like my drawing? No. My drawing looks nothing like it. Do I care? No, not in the slightest. Was it fun? God, yes. It was a lot of fun splashing that around. I think there's some really, really cool bits in this. I'll be honest. Bits I really like, bits not so keen on. Doesn't matter. That was a fun thing to do. I like the swatching. Waterproof apples are the best. So there you go, now you know. I do hope you enjoyed that. There's going to be a slightly longer version on my Patreon. But yeah, I just hope you got something from it, and I hope you get the idea that you can just play, just have a go. There's literally no right or wrong, and I do strongly believe that by chucking yourself in with watercolours, with these wet media, going too far, then you'll learn a lot quicker. It's almost like your mistakes are learning nodes, and the more mistakes you make and the more you push the sort of steeper your learning curve is, in a way. So don't be afraid to get some quite cheap paper and just play, just splash some stuff around and see what happens. So have fun with your own style, have a go, and let me know how you get on. Cheers then. Bye bye.